Hey, 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 welcome back for another episode of Owning Your Sexual Self. Another wonderful, wonderful guest that I have on with me today. I want you all to meet Gina Gutierrez. I am so excited, you guys. Stay tuned for this episode because we also have a code for you to get 1 month free of Dipsea, which we will be talking about on this episode, I'm sure. But I'm so excited when Gina came on as a guest. She's like, "Hey, I would like to offer you this code for your listeners." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, yes." I have been wanting to give Dipsea a try for such a long time. And so I'm excited. She also gifted me 1 year of Dipsea for free for having her on the show. So I'm excited as you continue to listen to this podcast. I'm sure I'll be sharing some experiences from having access to this. So anyways, all of that to say, this is Gina, y'all. I'm excited to have her on today. She is an empathy-driven entrepreneur with her sights set on reimagining and prioritizing female pleasure. Ding, ding, ding. Already know she's going to be a great guest today. And as the co-founder and chief creative officer at Dipsea, a people-empowered story studio that produces a wide range of erotic, female-focused audio content. She's passionate about demonstrating why sexual wellness is essential and how storytelling and imagination are powerful tools that can help women unlock liberating connections with their bodies. Armed with a psychology degree from Duke, yes, Duke, and a desire to break the stigma that fantasy should be stifled, she's ready to help women everywhere tap into their sexual powers. Oh, I'm so excited. We're going to be talking about the link from sexual empowerment to well-being. And Gina's going to be offering us some tips throughout this episode to be able to help women tap into their sexuality in a world where sexual health remains just a dominantly male-focused narrative. I am pumped for this. Stay tuned. Make sure you listen to the end so we can get you that code. And without further ado, if you just heard that ding ding, Gina has just entered the waiting room. So let's go ahead and let her in, shall we? Thanks for listening, y'all. All right. Welcome, Gina, again to the show. Thank you so much for being on today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I didn't even ask where are you at in the world right now?
I'm in Oakland. I've been in the Bay Area for like 10 years now.
Oh, okay. Where are you from originally?
New York.
Ah, okay.
And where are you from? Because I'm detecting a tiny hint of an accent and I love it.
Oh, that's so funny. I'm in Michigan.
Yes.
So,
Okay. One of my best friends is from Michigan.
yes, Midwest accent is
Yeah.
that's probably a thing.
I love it.
That's funny. I've never been told I had an accent before. I like it.
You hit your A a little hard. I mean, I'm an audio person, right? So I think about it.
True. Yeah, which is what we're talking about today. You are the co-founder and creator of Dipsea, which I was saying, like, I'm so excited to get my subscription from you again. Thank you so much. And listeners, again, will get a code to be able to get themselves 1 month free. And so I'd love to just hear about your story, Gina. How did you even decide to start something like this, and what got you interested in it?
Totally. So Dipsea is an app for spicy audio stories. And, when we started it 6 years ago, my co-founder and I were telling people that we wanted to start an audio erotica company. And that phrase didn't exist yet in culture. Like, it wasn't a commonly understood phrase. And so what did it look like back then when we decided to do this? We were watching Headspace and Calm start to blow up. And we were just really interested in the idea that these apps were using audio to change how people felt, not just to give them information like podcasts were doing really, really effectively. But it was this like new territory where suddenly you could change how people felt in a day, right? Like you could impact the next 12 hours of their life. And to me, that's what was needed in sexual wellness, because we often think about our brains when it comes to sex only as things that hold us back. Like we're stuck in boss brain, we're filled with stress, we're preoccupied by something else, we're disassociating, we're worried about what our bodies look like, you name it. There's a long laundry list. But we very rarely think about positive sexuality, about the joys of sexuality coming from kind of a more mind first perspective, that it's both body and mind in concert. And we were like, what if we used audio as the medium and we told amazing, sexy stories, and we helped people got more immersed in the idea that their sexuality is easier to access? So it was like this big hunch, kind of like a philosophy project. And we were like, okay, can we make this real? And in the earliest days, that was me and Faye in her kitchen, unplugging her fridge because it was loud, hiring friends who were voice actors, I was the director, she was the sound engineer, and we were kind of off to the races in this really scrappy way. That was our like working in a garage founding story to prove that these stories could really do something for people. And while those stories weren't the best stories we've ever made, not by far, we now have hundreds and hundreds, and they're way better than the ones that we could create in the very beginning. They clearly did something for people. Women listened to them and were like, oh, yeah, like this does help me. Like, oh, yeah, there's a reason that I don't look for porn or don't like porn. Oh, yeah, this kind of reminds me of romance novels, but it feels younger and like more cool and more contemporary. And so we knew we were onto something.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. And so when you first started recording this, I always wonder, do you just record about previous sexual experiences that you've had? Or do you feel like, is it more you're recording and maybe not you, but like the people that are recording, are they recording fantasies that they have and that's how they're coming up with the stories?
Great question. No. So we kind of take almost like an HBO model. We want to be like a best in class story studio. We want to tell amazing fiction content. So while some of our writers might be influenced by their own experiences, as all writers are, these stories are very much crafted to be this like aspirational reality where the guy that you make eyes with across the subway platform ends up being like amazing and like loves consent and also knows exactly how to turn you on, right? Like that's maybe not every single encounter or meet cute, but it's the ones that we want you to have on Dipsea. So our writers are not our voice actors. It's not like a one person kind of gets the mic and then creates their experience. It's rather we craft these scripts. We work with amazing voice actors who are cast specifically for those roles to play those characters and then kind of stitch that together and create these immersive story worlds.
Wow. That is incredible. I didn't realize, I guess, until just now that it's like, it is actually something that you're directing. It is like directing a movie essentially, but it's audio, no visual.
Totally. And a lot of people ask us the question, like, how is erotic content ethical? How do I look for like the badge, the stamp of this is ethical content? And unfortunately, there is no one putting that badge out in the world. But one of the best ways that you can ensure that content is ethical is one, that you're paying for it. But in the audio erotica space, you're not actually paying for content that has been made with sex work, right? So there's actually like a whole other universe of content where the people who are making our content are actors and they're actually not together. There's no like, creating a safe creative space where everything is consensual, et cetera, in the same ways, because in our world, every actor is kind of in their own solo voice booth. They have a Dipsea director in their ears remotely or across kind of the screen in another room saying, can you do a take more like this? Can you do a take more like this? And then all the magic happens later when we stitch it together, which is kind of crazy because people will be like, I love Jack and Gia, I love their relationship, or I love Quentin and Nadia, I love their relationship, or whoever else. And the magic comes by stitching them. Those people haven't met each other, which I think blows people's minds.
Wow. Yeah, that's like spicy a little bit too in and of itself. I love that.
Yeah, you wonder if those people would have chemistry IRL.
Yeah. Wow. I had no idea when I was getting into this episode today. I would be learning so much about it already. And okay, so with this, you mentioned some names. So when people get on the app, can they follow like different scenes and different stories around the same characters? It's not new characters every single time.
Great question. So Dipsea is an app that was founded by women for a primarily female audience. That being said, we want to be as inclusive of a space as possible. So we have all sorts of stories. We have stories that are queer. We have stories that include non-binary characters. We're really thoughtful about casting voice actors that sound like the diversity of the world around us. So over 50% of our voice actors identify as people of color. So there's a lot of different content that you can find in the Dipsea app. And once you figure out what you might like, which we have quizzes in the app to help you get to, then you can listen to more of it. So maybe you really know that you like a certain dynamic. You love friends to lovers. Great. There's tons of content like that. Maybe you're only interested in her plus her content. Great. You can stay in that universe. And maybe you really fall in love with the relationship between two characters. And we have episodes that let you kind of go through the arc of their relationship. So for example, I mentioned Jack and Gia. Jack and Gia are from a story called Hometown, and there's like 15, 20 episodes of Hometown now. So you can like really get into the world as if it was a TV show of these people.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and that I like that you said a TV show because originally I was thinking like books, really like reading books, and it's like you go to the first book. I started that with A Court of Roses and Thorns, or what I
actually we're big ACOTAR fans at Dipsea.
Yeah, are you? I could not. I only did the first two, and I just can't. But I just started Fourth Wing, and so I'm really enjoying Fourth Wing already so far. So anyways.
Cool.
That's another topic for another day.
We're getting more and more inspired by the fantasy and fanfic
Mhm.
spaces because there's just such devoted fans. And so
Mhm.
Dipsea actually in the last year has started creating more fantasy content, more historical romance content, because it's so clear that fans know what they want and we can really go much further than happens in a book environment where we can like make those experiences sound so much more immersive. There's so much room to kind of play in audio. And so it's been really, really fun to kind of venture into those universes.
Yeah. And I imagine the turnover is much quicker too, rather than a writer having to write an entire novel for it to go through publishing and whatnot. Like with this, it seems like it would be quicker. So if you get ideas, which I'd love to hear, like what are client testimonials? Can people give feedback and ideas and stuff like that for creation? But if you get something right, you have your writers, it's quicker than if somebody were to write an entire book. Yeah.
It's a great observation. It allows us to be more reactive and responsive to what our listeners tell us. So if you're a listener and you love Dipsea content and you're following us on Instagram or TikTok, when you're writing comments, we're reading those comments.
Mm-hmm.
When you're listening to a story and leaving your feedback at the box at the end, we're reading that. And so we have a really quick ability to say, okay, let's take the story in this direction because we know what listeners are asking for. So yes, it really allows us to kind of shape the story in real time with what listeners tell us.
Mm. What a fun job. Just creating and writing and directing like sex stories all day. That I would love to live a day in your life.
It's pretty funny. People are always like, wow, people would not expect our Slack to be what it is because like we're also like pulling growth levers and like, we're doing all that regular stuff that like every other team is doing too. And
Mhm.
also are very comfortable talking about sex all day long.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like I would thrive in a company like that. And oftentimes like I miss that, just I'm over here like entrepreneur life, right? But yeah, I love that when you get in a space of people that are sex positive and open. I do truly feel like that's when like real magic is created and some really special things. So that's super neat.
Yeah, totally.
So so you created this thing, and that we want to focus on to how sexual empowerment ties into well-being. So do you have stories of people that like of listeners that you can share, and how this has really changed people's lives?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, what makes our jobs worthwhile is hearing real people's experiences, getting on the phone with them and hearing about their lives, seeing app store reviews of how this has changed people's relationships. One of the things that I love to tell the story of is I had this one day where I was talking to users back to back to back. And I was on the phone with one person. She was a 30 something mom in Utah. And she was saying that her relationship with her husband had dramatically improved because of Dipsea. She'd always kind of been there for sex. She'd been like open to it, but hadn't really enjoyed it that much. She
Mhm.
was like, I love my husband. And so like, I love sex with him because I love my husband, but I had no idea that sex could be like really enjoyable for me, that I could ask for more of what I like more of and enjoy it more. And Dipsea unlocked that for me. So thank you so much. So I had this amazing phone call. I get off the phone with her and then I talk to this other person who's 19. They're an art student at Pratt in Brooklyn, non-binary. They're like a Gen Z pandemic kid being like, okay, I'm queer. I don't know how to like go out and date. I don't know what sex should be like for a queer person like me. I feel awkward. I feel like people are going to think that I'm like, a baby queer and I don't know what I'm doing.
Mhm.
And Dipsea made me feel more confident saying like, oh, I could sound like this. I could ask for consent like this. I could give consent like this, and felt so much more confident going out and dating because of Dipsea. So hearing those like disparate experiences, I think is so emblematic of how amazing it is that tapping into what your sexuality is and what you might demand of or expect or hope for and create in your own life is just incredible and affects people who are living very, very different experiences.
Mhm.
Um, and that was, of course, our hope at the outset of Dipsea. And it's amazing to see that come to fruition. But like very core in that was we were like, let's make something that's fun and entertaining and cool and aspirational. So people like want to try this. And then they're learning as they go. They're like, oh, this is how I might X, or like, oh, maybe I could send this story to my boyfriend and be like, what do you think?
Mhm.
And that it actually like creates this loop of more empowerment, again, like outside of the 15 minutes of listening, but in your own life. And we were never like Dipsea as an education product. We've never talked about it as like something that like improves your sex life. We've never been so like cut and dry about it. We've been like, enjoy, these stories are awesome. And
Mhm.
that I think is this really sweet spot where like we've combined storytelling and sexual wellness in a way that doesn't feel like you're like taking a vitamin with a glass of water. It's like, it's a gummy vite. You're like taking off the table because they taste good because you want another one.
Yeah. Oh, I love that analogy. And yeah, I have found with listening to audio erotica too, it's like has sparked my own creativity. And so and
Yep.
learning and being able to fantasize more and about new things. So it's like reading or listening to things that I haven't experienced or even heard of, right? And specifically where I hear a lot from people is helping them dirty talk better when you're reading it or you're hearing it, because oftentimes people are like, I don't know what to say, right? I feel awkward. And so
I know.
in other avenues, like that can really be resourceful, I think, for so many.
It's a really, really good point. One thing that we love right now is our TikTok and Instagram has done a lot of what men sound like moaning. And it's amazing how popular these posts are because there's so many people in heterosexual relationships that are like, I really love the verbal affirmation of a man moaning. I really think it's so sexy. And so many men who are like, whoa, women are really into this and like didn't even know that their vocalizing could like really be important or powerful and sexy in the bedroom. And like that seems like basic to a degree, that like moaning is like an unlock and to have great sex, but it's not basic because it's like really opening up people's eyes as to how the basic building blocks of stuff can like really change what it feels like to be in bed with someone, to be intimate with someone. And that stuff is just really cool, you know, like this idea of like what I can sound like, not being like saying the perfect thing, but like literally just like moan because you're experiencing pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think moaning and sound also just creates such a more embodied experience, right? Like you're actually feeling into your pleasure. And then, yeah, as you're saying, like the communication piece of this to be able to I guess technically it's verbalizing to your
Yeah.
partner, what feels good. And I would also offer here moaning when it feels good, not moaning when you think you should be moaning, because you
Right.
don't want to send the wrong the wrong messages, right? If you're moaning about something that you don't actually enjoy, your partner might take that as like, oh, I'm going to keep doing this thing. And then you're lying there very frustrated and not in the moment at all.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm a big proponent of like try it and see. Like even if you moan in the wrong moment because you think it could be a good moment to get it sexier, you get to have a debrief later and be like, I tried
Mhm.
moaning there. What'd you think? You know, like to make it a little bit more playful and like a little more vulnerable in a way that's like silly, I think has space. My co-founder and I talk about that a lot. Like when are we allowed to be funny? Like, can you be funny while sex is happening? Definitely can be funny during foreplay. And I think definitely can be funny in the afterplay because like it's true. Sex is like experimental and like a little weird and a little awkward, and to give us the space to be able to giggle about it is great, right? And yeah, sometimes you got to debrief the moans. How did that work for you? LOL.
Yes, I love that. And how did you, so making this connection to somebody's overall well-being, and actually before I go there, I want to focus back on the desire piece, because as I was mentioning before we hit record here, like one of the main things that when I'm working with women is around low libido, low desire, low sex drive, however you want to categorize it. And oftentimes this is something that I bring up to them, like helping them literally think themselves to pleasure, think themselves to orgasm in some cases. But the mind is such a powerful thing, as you said, like the mind is our number one sex organ, right? So if that's not turned on, your genitals essentially are not going to be turned on.
Yep.
But how do you see then this app, or just the concept of this, being able to help women's sexual desire?
Yeah. So if you're familiar with Dr. Emily Nagoski, she's the preacher of the gospel in many ways around women's sexual wellness. And something that she says and talks about a lot is spontaneous versus responsive desire. And so spontaneous desire might be like, I watch something sexy, like a scene in a Netflix show, or I see someone on the street that I think is really hot and suddenly I'm turned on. And responsive desire might be I'm getting cuddled and kissed and like maybe, whoa, like actually I am kind of turned on and like, oh, maybe I am into sex. And because of this fundamental difference between the sexes, women often feel that because they're not having a Hollywood movie so turned on, throw me against a wall, spontaneous desire, that they are definitionally low libido. And usually they interpret that as something's wrong with me. I've heard that over and over and over. I'm sure you've heard that over and over and over in your practice. And so a lot of what I think we do at Dipsea is being like, what if it doesn't have to be so cut and dry hard? Like you need to, you know, work on this problem of yours? What if desire isn't a problem to be solved? What if your fire is just burning a little low and you need to stoke those flames? And Dipsea helps you stoke those flames. So you don't necessarily need to listen like right before you have sex with your partner. You totally can. If that works for you, amazing. Maybe you listen in the car ride home to help transition from your boss brain into your home brain. Maybe you listen because it's a little secret for you as you browse books at the library. Like there are so many ways to keep your pilot light on. That's framing directly from one of our customers.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, yeah, it helps keep the flame alive. The pilot light's on so that when my partner initiates, I'm not like, ugh. I'm like, oh yeah, maybe. I'm just in like a more creative and sensual mind space all the time.
Yeah.
So it works different ways for different people. But what we hope with Dipsea is that it makes it feel like not so hard. It's not like, oh, this is like another thing on my to-do list. I'm low libido. I got to fix that. No, just listen to some sexy stories. Like maybe that's a really fun way to make you feel this isn't a problem at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you said, have fun with it. And this is very much in alignment with my work with women that come in with this too. It's like, okay, how can you add more eroticism throughout your day?
Yep.
So whether that's like really, really enjoying the foods that you're eating in the morning, or like really intentionally drinking your coffee at the start of your day. Yeah, like moaning when something feels good or tastes good or whatnot. And then, yeah, listening to either audio erotica or listening to an audible book or reading erotica. I think that's such an easy way to just literally add more spice into your life. And so that way it doesn't feel so foreign when you're trying to tap into your more intimate erotic side. You have these sort of like these archives that are already been playing throughout your day to day that you can tap into. Yeah.
That is so well said. I think we understand this when it comes to exercise. It's like if you haven't been to a workout class in, I don't know, 6 months, you're like, oh my God, I have to go to the gym. I should go to the gym. I have to go to the gym. And it's so hard to get there. And then you get over the first hump and then you go to second time. And then the third time you actually want to go because you remember what it feels like to feel so good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that barrier can get really high, especially if you just had a baby or like work's been really stressful in your long-term monogamous relationship. Like the hurdle gets higher the longer you're like not really in that mindset. And so just like dipping your toe back in, which is actually the name of Dipsea, like take a dip in the sea. It's just like dip a toe. That's all you have to do. Like just dipping a toe back in makes it feel less like, oh my God, this insurmountable problem that I'll never be able to tackle. And we're like, I remember what that feels like and that feels good. And I want to feel more of it. Yeah. Do you watch Sex Education on Netflix?
I started to, and my short answer is no, but tell me, please speak, because I know a lot of people watch it.
It's a great show. It's like takes a lot of risks and I really respect that. And it really shows pleasure and awkwardness of sex, which I love. And I just started watching the new season, and in the first or the second episode, two of the characters get in a fight because one of them says like, I'm not really that into sex tonight. No problem. We go to bed. And then the other character wakes up to them masturbating and is like, oh my God, you said you weren't into sex. Like, why are you masturbating? And it's actually framed as like, I actually feel betrayed by you. Like it really hurt my feelings. And I think that that's also a really common thing where it's like, sometimes it can feel easier to make pleasure all your own, like solo play, than to engage in the more complicated reality of bringing in another person. And like what we would say at Dipsea is like, maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe that's a great thing. Like maybe that's actually the ramp into more consistent or more reliable pleasure in partnered life. And like, so actually what if you saw self-pleasure and encouraged a partner to see self-pleasure as like a way to get you in the zone more, to get you in that like practice more versus like to take away from the times that you spend together. And that's kind of a radical mindset, like clearly if it's like on the show this way.
Yeah.
Kind of inspiring, I thought.
I agree. I think that that's like a perfect example of somebody taking ownership for their pleasure and like and doing what feels most aligned with them. Yeah, you have now inspired me to maybe give this show another shot. It was more than 5 years ago that I remember like starting to watch this when it first came out, and I don't even remember why. I don't know, but yeah, I think I need to give this a go again for sure.
Yeah, I mean it's made a place in culture, and I'm here for sex positive TV.
Yeah, same. And you mentioned solo play, and I would love for you to speak on how, well, I guess, do you know with your listeners, are they mostly listening to this for solo time, or do you have users, do they use it like within a partnership mostly?
Yep. So when we survey folks, they overwhelmingly say that they listen alone. So there is a small percentage of people that listens with partners, but it's small. It's like 10% ish. And the reason for that is it's like really hard to enjoy the same episode of a TV show together, right? Like you just might like different things. And then you 10x that when you're talking about something that like turns you both on, right? So it can just be a little challenging to find one piece of content that's going to work for both of you. What we tend to find more is that people listen solo and then they'll be like, I listened to this episode, and they'll tell their partner all about it. They'll even like send them the episode as like homework. Like, I really liked this. I thought this was really sexy. So people are using it in their relationships a lot, but they're not necessarily listening together. And yes, we hear from most people, they listen for self-pleasure, but more and more we hear like people are listening, driving, at the library, kind of like walking down the street, and it's like this sexy secret. And I think TikTok has really blown that up too, because it's like just this like fun, subversive way. It's kind of like getting back at the man in this really interesting, different way. And I'm like totally here for Gen Z being like, haha, I have erotica in my headphones while I walk. But yes, most people are listening at home, lights dimmed, nighttime, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely can see it play out both ways. I personally, I've done both ways too. But it's funny that you say that, because I'm like, yeah, when my husband and I started listening to the book Diary of a Submissive together, and we would listen to it literally together driving to the gym in the mornings, and it was just, yeah, same. It was just this experience, like people driving next to you, they don't know that you're listening to like this one being tied up and like all these, like sexy things. And then I loved the debrief afterwards, or during, like saying like, ooh, I would really like to try that. I would really like to experience that. So I think, yeah, for those people that are listening while driving or whatnot, if their partner's in the car, I think certainly like try that out and see how that could change the relationship, or just add that like layer of excitement, I think, to it.
That reminds me of two things. One is we were really, really specific in our choices early on at Dipsea to not make people feel like this is something that they needed to hide. Like we didn't want to name it like whisper or secret. We didn't want to make people feel like they should be ashamed of listening to Dipsea. But on the other hand, I love that there's like this subversion that's happening on social media where people were like, I'm enjoying the secret of it. I'm enjoying the fact that people don't know this. It's actually like a way for me to take back that power. It's not because I like feel like I'm doing something shameful. It's because I get to have something that's mine. And that's something I couldn't have predicted. So like our listeners just like blew my mind with that. The other thing I'll say is like, that's amazing that you have that fun thing with your husband right now, or, when you were reading it. And I would say another thing that's really helpful for people, if you're like, oh, Dipsea sounds cool, but I don't know, is, fantasy gets to just be fantasy sometimes. Like fantasy could totally inspire how you talk and are IRL, but fantasy could also just be something that you totally revel in and take pleasure in and then stays over there. You might love stories that have nothing to do with your real life. That is extremely common, and like give yourself some grace to have your own private mystery world in your brain. Like you get that. There's nothing wrong with that, because I think sometimes it feels like too much of a hurdle to be like, if I listen to this, does that mean that's who I am? Is that my identity? No, literally not at all. So just like take that kind of weight off your shoulders.
Yeah, absolutely. And I previously, probably a year ago now, recorded an episode on fantasy and like how to share your fantasies with your partner. And that is, definitely, I'm very glad that you mentioned that. It's like sometimes fantasy is meant to stay just fantasy. Fantasy doesn't mean I necessarily want this thing to happen. Exactly. Which is great. And if you can think this thing and it sparks turn on and it sparks arousal, right? Like all the better. Like use that as your tool, use that to your advantage, certainly.
Exactly. Like when you find something like that and you find something that works for you, you've just done something really great. Like tally that, right? Instead of being like, oh, like is this something that I need to share or be transparent about? Or like, I think there's so many rules that we give ourselves of like what we should do. And sometimes just finding something that works for you should just be considered like a win. That's just a win. That's great. It doesn't like have to mean a bigger thing.
Yeah. And you reminded me too, and talking just like through TikToks and reels and stuff with this, I came across one the other day, and it was actually a man that was listening to some sort of audio erotic. I don't know if it was your platform or just a user in general, but they were like sitting at the gas station, so their windows rolled down because they're pumping gas, and then there's like a guy at the next pump listening, and it's just like on full blast in the the radio, and he's just like sitting there, like straight face, and the guy at the other pump is like, "What in the hell?" And then they make eye contact, and they're both like, "Yeah," like you just
up.
yeah. I was like, I love this. Just normalizing sexuality, right? Like it doesn't have to be such a taboo thing.
That's funny. I love it.
Yeah, we all got here some way, right?
True.
Yeah. Well, this was such a great conversation, Gina. Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you're hoping to cover around the app or just in our general conversation today?
Well, I would love for you to try for yourself and explore. So if you want to have a 30-day free trial, or like standard free trial is 7 days, but we want to give you a lot longer if you want to explore as a listener. So if you go to dipseastories.com, DIPSEA stories.com/Rachel, you get 30 days kind of activated automatically. So play around. If you like it, amazing.
Yes, I'm so excited. And again, thank you, Gina, for my gift as well. I'm so excited to tap into this. I'm hoping actually, yeah, once we jump off here, I might have some minutes in between to be able to go off,
Yes.
do my quiz and get my library going. And yeah, my husband bowls on Monday nights, so I can have some fun to myself this evening.
Love it. Love to hear it. Well, it's great to meet you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, absolutely. And is there where could people go? As you said, like you have a social account, where can people go to find Dipsea or you specifically if they're wanting to connect?
Totally. So if you want to find us either on Instagram or on TikTok, you can find us at Dipsea Stories. The content on there is fun and educational and silly, and I think you find a ton to explore, and also a community of people that are talking in the comments about what characters they love and what they want to see more of. So definitely you can engage there. You can find a TED Talk that I've done on the power of imagination in sexuality. If you look up my name, Gina Gutierrez TED, and yeah, start there, and you'll see all my social handles and everything on that site.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Gina. This was so great.
Thanks.